What happens when two sworn enemies unite? Could the very issue that divided them for decades now bring them together? In Northern Ireland, Catholic nationalists and Protestant unionists, historical adversaries, have found common ground in an unexpected alliance. Welcome back to Nowhere Diary. In this video, we'll delve into these rare moments of unity between two opposing groups, united by a shared cause that transcends their long-standing divide. For centuries, Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland have been locked in a bitter conflict rooted in deep political, religious, and cultural divisions. The origins of this animosity date back to the early 17th century, when British colonization, particularly in the Ulster region, displaced Irish Catholics and installed Protestant settlers loyal to the British Crown. This division became even more pronounced after the 1921 partition of Ireland, which left Northern Ireland predominantly Protestant as part of the United Kingdom, while the newly formed Irish Free State was overwhelmingly Catholic. The conflict escalated into the Troubles, a period of intense violence from the late 1960s to the 1990s. Protestant unionists, who wanted Northern Ireland to remain part of the UK, clashed violently with Catholic nationalists seeking unification with the Republic of Ireland. The violence, which included bombings, shootings, and riots, led to over 3,600 deaths and left a legacy of deep mistrust and division between the two communities. Protestants, enjoying political and economic dominance, often discriminated against Catholics in areas such as housing and employment. Inspired by the civil rights movement in the United States, Catholics began to protest against these injustices, which only fueled further violence from Protestant loyalists. Despite the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which largely brought an end to the violence, the scars of the conflict remain, and divisions between the two communities persist. However, the recent alliance between Catholic nationalists and Protestant unionists against a common cause, opposing the UK government's policies on Muslim asylum seekers, marks an extraordinary and rare moment of solidarity. This grassroots movement, which has united communities across Dublin and beyond, opposes the government's handling of the asylum seeker crisis. Groups like Coolock Says No, Ballymun Says No, Finglas Says No, East Wall Says No, NTMK Says No, and Darndale and Belcamp Says No have become the voices of their neighborhoods, advocating against what they see as unfair and poorly managed governmental policies impacting their daily lives. The movement gained momentum in late 2022, primarily in East Wall, where residents were shocked to find that a former office building had been repurposed into emergency accommodation for asylum seekers without prior consultation. The sudden influx of refugees, particularly single men, sparked concerns about safety, the adequacy of local resources, and the long-term impact on the community. Many residents felt blindsided by the government's decision, which they believe was made without considering the needs and opinions of the existing community. The protests soon spread to other areas, like Ballymun and Finglas, where similar frustrations were simmering. These communities, already struggling with issues like housing shortages and underfunded public services, saw the arrival of asylum seekers as another strain on their limited resources. The government's neglect of these communities, coupled with the added burden of accommodating new arrivals, fueled a sense of injustice and betrayal among the locals. Adding to the tensions are accusations of police brutality during the protests. Many within the movement complain that the police used heavy-handed tactics to suppress their demonstrations, further alienating the protesters and deepening their resolve. This repression has only strengthened the unity within the movement, bringing together diverse groups who might not otherwise have found common cause. This movement reflects a much deeper sense of frustration and discontent with how the government is handling both the refugee crisis and domestic issues like housing. These protests are as much about asserting the rights and voices of local communities as they are about opposing specific policies. As these groups continue to rally, they highlight the deep divides and challenges the country faces in balancing its global responsibilities with the needs of its citizens. The communities involved in the protests have expressed deep concerns about the government's plans to house unvetted asylum seekers, many of whom are Muslim, in their neighborhoods. residents fear that the influx of young, single men will strain local resources and increase security risks. These concerns have been exacerbated by a lack of consultation from the government, leaving many locals feeling blindsided and ignored. The response to these protests has been marked by significant tension between the demonstrators and the Garda, the Irish police. Allegations of excessive force during these demonstrations, such as the use of pepper spray, aggressive crowd control tactics, and the arrest of several protesters, have fueled accusations of police brutality. These actions have only deepened the community's resolve, as they feel they are not just fighting against the asylum centers, but also against a government and law enforcement system that is dismissive of their concerns. This sense of marginalization has unified these diverse communities under the Says No banner, amplifying their grievances and strengthening their opposition. Their public actions have included blocking roads, organizing large-scale protests, and marching to local Garda stations to file formal complaints against what they describe as police brutality during demonstrations. Their strategy also involves engaging with the media to ensure their voices are heard, portraying their cause as a fight against government overreach rather than an expression of xenophobia. Despite facing criticism from some media outlets and government officials, the movement continues to grow, leveraging both traditional and social media to rally more supporters to their cause. However, these demonstrations have not been without conflict. Clashes with the Gardaí have become a common occurrence, with protesters accusing the police of heavy-handed tactics. In turn, authorities have responded with increased security measures, including the deployment of riot police and the use of pepper spray to disperse crowds. The movement has also been fueled by the broader context of unrest across the UK, following a tragic stabbing incident in Southport in August 2024. This incident, which took the lives of 3 young girls attending a Taylor Swift-themed dance workshop, shocked the nation and added a sense of urgency to the protests against asylum centers. The government's response to the Says No protests has been marked by a significant disconnect between officials and the concerns of the protesters, many of whom come from blue-collar backgrounds. These communities, already struggling with economic hardships, feel further marginalized by the government's decisions to place asylum centers in their neighborhoods without consultation. The protesters' main grievance is that the government is neglecting their needs in favor of policies that they believe do not consider the local impact. This situation is further worsened by the labeling of these protests as racist or far-right by much of the media and political figures, all of whom are left-leaning. Such labels not only stigmatize the protesters, but also oversimplify and dismiss their concerns as mere extremism. This framing often leads to a lack of serious engagement with the issues at hand, further alienating the communities involved. The blue-collar roots of many protesters add another layer of complexity to the situation. These individuals feel that their voices are ignored in favor of a more elite, white-collar perspective that dominates government and media narratives. The tension between these social groups is palpable, with the working-class communities feeling that they are bearing the brunt of policies made by those who do not share their daily realities. This sense of being sidelined is fueling the intensity of the protests, with participants becoming even more resolute in their actions, as they are fighting not just against immigration policies, but also against broader systemic neglect. The government's response, which has often involved heavy-handed policing and dismissive rhetoric, only deepens the divide, making it harder to find a peaceful resolution. As these protests grow, they may push the government to reconsider how asylum centers are planned and communicated to communities, potentially leading to more stringent consultations with local residents before implementing such projects. In Northern Ireland, this unlikely unity between Catholic and Protestant groups over a shared cause challenges long-standing sectarian divisions, potentially setting a precedent for future cooperation on social issues. However, it also carries the risk of deepening societal divides if the government continues to dismiss these protests without addressing the underlying concerns. This complex interplay between socioeconomic factors, media portrayal, and government response will shape Ireland's approach to both immigration and community relations in the coming years. And that's all we have for you in this video. It's truly a sight to behold, the unlikely but powerful alliance between Catholic nationalists and Protestant unionists in Northern Ireland. United by shared concerns over Muslim immigration policies and the perceived neglect of their communities by the government, these groups have found common ground. We've examined how this unity challenges historical animosities and what it could mean for future government policies, particularly in terms of asylum seekers and community policing. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you agree or disagree with any of the points these groups raised? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us grow and continue bringing you content that matters. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.